So thanks everybody. Thanks for attending Workshop Wednesday again. This is our 4th month of the series, and we're happy you're with us today. Just a brief introduction. I think a lot of you folks that have been with us before, and certainly for some of the new folks, this is really a knowledge series that Agile developed based on our client feedback. I think a lot of you may have seen our monthly survey. So typically what we'll do is we'll send a survey out, figure out, how people are doing with the application and where they need help. And based on your feedback, we develop content to share to help you better understand Fleet Commander, its capabilities, as well as things that you can do on your own without having to wait for us. So it really is a win-win situation from that standpoint. I would encourage everybody to please tell us how we're doing. So if you do see our survey, please respond to it. We really love hearing from you, and look forward to working with everybody in the future. John, you can go to the next. In terms of, and again, before we begin, John mentioned the webinar is being recorded. And we do make a copy of the recording and the slide deck available by download after the meeting. So that's great. Video is optional, so we'll typically keep ourselves on video, but you can choose whether you do or don't. We ask that you mute yourself during the webinar, and if you do want to, typically folks do recommend putting questions in the chat window. It's more efficient that way. So if you do find the need to use audio, please use one or the other, your computer or your phone. For those of you that are familiar with Teams, you can see at the very top of the Teams window, there's a little chat call out. So you can click on that. You can type your question in that, but please tell us who you are and where you're from, from an organization standpoint. Okay. And go ahead, John. Looks like there's a little bit of latency here. In today, so I think some of you, I think you'll find this really interesting. For those of you that were with us at the very first Workshop Wednesday, we started down this path of email. And I think a lot of you understand that Fleet Commander has some great email capabilities, and there's a lot to it. And so what we decided to do as we thought about the agenda and thought about how we want to show this is we figured we'd parse this thing out into 2 buckets. So the first one kind of brought you through the application itself and some of the general tools, whereas today's session is going to be more on the advanced configuration. And as you can imagine, there's a lot to it. In terms of the kinds of things that you can do with it, adding, either fiscal people or supervisors to it, and different kinds of activations and actions that are available, as well as troubleshooting it. So what happens when it all goes sideways and people say, gee, I'm not getting emails anymore. So, that's today's topic. And I think, John, with that, the floor is yours.
Excellent. Thank you, Joe, for the introduction. And thank you, everyone, for attending once again. As Joe mentioned, this is a continuation of the topic that we started with our very first Workshop Wednesday. On that one, we covered customizing and using Fleet Commander emails. Some of the material that we're going to cover today actually dives deeper into that. Some of the things may look familiar, and included in the deck actually is a link to the shared folder that covers that March session. So definitely you want to consider what we're presenting today alongside with what we presented back in March. One of the most important features of Fleet Commander is the ability to be able to automate the emails as part of the reservation process. These help keep your drivers and your requesters, and even as you'll see today, your supervisors, physical officers, and fleet admins and attendees apprised of reservation requests and details on that. There is a lot of the settings that we're going to cover today are ones, if you're new to Agile Fleet, some of our newest clients are ones that would have been covered and discussed during your configuration process as the Fleet Commander was being set up. For those that have been clients of ours for a while, needs change as your fleet develops and goes through the years. It may be that as it was originally configured, the emails that can be sent out are not being sent out because they simply at the point in time when you started, you weren't aware of them, or it just wasn't necessary. So that's what we're kind of going to look at today to help bring y'all up to speed on what is some of the abilities in Fleet Commander in regards to automated emails. As you can see from the agenda here, we'll take a look at configuration specifically, starting off with the recipient activation. There are certain types of recipients that they'll receive emails if Fleet Commander is set up to do so, and we'll go through those with general reservations. We'll talk about we'll look at the admin emails, attendant emails, supervisor emails, and fiscal officer emails. Then there's also, we're going to take a look at specific email activations. Some of the emails won't be sent out unless you configure them to be sent out. And we'll look at some of these will look familiar to you because we discussed them at our March presentation, but we didn't really dive into where in Fleet Commander these are at that time. We simply had the ability to show you where the emails were at in regards to changing the layout and the wording of it, but this will actually show you how to make sure those things are going and being sent out. Then we're going to close out the discussion today with troubleshooting. As Joe said, oftentimes we hear, people saying emails are not being sent. You will be hearing those same complaints yourselves, that emails that are not being received. Well, there's some basic troubleshooting practices that we as our support team will use in trying to figure these out, and you're going to do those likewise yourself. The advice that we're sharing with you today is based upon various experiences. Part of it is from my own personal experience with Indiana University for 10 years as I coordinated the rental fleet. I used Fleet Commander during that time, and so a lot of the things that we talk about is from that experience. Some of it is from just the design and the experience of our staff as in the product development, and then of course also we glean from the experience that we learned from our clients like yourselves. So let's go ahead and get into the discussion. First of all, recipient configuration. There's a couple levels that we're going to look at as we address. There's kind of the general recipients and the emails that are sent out that have to be checked off in configuration, make sure that those are sent out. Those are at the site level based upon usage types. There's also emails that can be sent out and received to you as administrator. Those are found both on the site level and at enterprise level. We also have emails that can be sent to your attendants. Now, these are those that might serve as your dispatchers, individuals that maybe are not always logging in to Fleet Commander and checking into the status of those things, but you can actually designate individuals at the location level where they'll receive emails regarding new reservations that have been received through Fleet Commander. And then also in regards to kind of outside the circle of those that would be considered admins or those that operate and use Fleet Commander from your fleet itself, you have emails that can be sent to supervisors, and also they can be copied into fiscal officers. In regards to those general usage type emails, emails are basically sent out for reservation, like new requests and request approved emails. Those are generated when someone makes a reservation in Fleet Commander. However, you don't have to have those sent out, and you can specify which usage types you want that to occur, and you can do that by site. Within Fleet Commander, you have your main domain for Fleet Commander, but within that, you may be managing multiple sites. Well, these type of emails can be turned on and off at the site level, and then within the site level, based upon usage type. In particular, when you go to configure site settings, edit site reservation tab, what you'll end up seeing is that there's under email notifications, this checkbox here, email locations like that might be for in-state rentals or out-of-state travel. You probably want to make sure that you're always sending out these confirmation emails, these new request emails. But in regards to the usage type for maintenance, those are really kind of internal to your fleet operation itself, and there's probably not a reason to be sending out emails to that particular usage type. In that situation, you just simply leave it unchecked. And as the note that I pulled here from out of our user manual, this is a good way also to basically turn off emails being sent out, reservation emails, if there's some sort of testing that needs to be done on your site. That's a kind of the general recipients emails. Specifically in regards to the administrator emails, there are emails that can be sent out to you as an administrator, and those are in regards to these reservations, these incoming reservations. This one particular, which is actually on the same configuration page as configure sites, edit site reservation tabs, um, is just above that section we're looking at. You can decide if you want to receive emails that are the initial requests, the change requests, or the cancel requests. You can make those decisions on, and make those changes within your system as you see fit. In addition to this, this email is actually sent to the email address that is configured within that site level. So, to verify who you're receiving those, will be receiving those emails. And in this case, we have our own Ron Katz, who has joined us today. He's on this example screen here. This is found at the site level under the general tab, and that can be changed as you see fit within each of your sites within the Commander. In addition to that, we also have enterprise level emails. The two specifically that we have at the enterprise level is regarding if somebody updates their profile within Fleet Commander. If you have this set up so that individuals have that ability to edit their own their profiles and give you additional information about themselves, you can have it an email sent to you at the admin level whenever that occurs. In addition, and then also if someone is using the dependents tab and information within their user profile, you can do that and mark that likewise. The email that would receive this is again based upon the enterprise level. So in this case, you would go to configure enterprise settings in the general tab, and you'll find it there under that portion. One bonus tip I want to give you in regards to this, because I at IU ended up receiving all the initial requests and cancellation emails. You can monitor those, and we encourage you to monitor those type of changes, pending requests and change requests and cancellations through the dashboard. But a good way in a backup system is to actually check those off, have them being sent to the admin email of your choice, and then basically set up a rule in Outlook where those will automatically be filed within your email server. Set up various folders for the specific email subjects. New requests versus a change request, have two different folders for that. And then what you do is, as you set up your rule, go ahead and use the first part of the subject line. Don't use the full subject line, because in many cases you'll end up getting into reservation numbers and things like that would exclude emails from being following the rules. So use the main portion of the subject line. And in doing so, you'll have a reference point in case you want to go back and somebody says that that they didn't receive an email, or they have questions about a particular reservation. It may be good for you to take a look at the very same document they're looking at, like the reservation email that they've received. You'll be able to do that if you do a key search for the reservation number or items like that. You can review that information yourself. So that's a kind of a tip that I used while at IU. In addition to the admin email, we also have emails that can be sent to your attendants or to your dispatchers. This is done on the location level of Fleet Commander. You'll know within each site you have a locations that you designate where within that property or that site these vehicles are actually being stored. Well, within the configure site settings, edit site and location tab, under the additional information portion, there is a notify attendant and attendant email address. Click on that, put in the email address that you want for the attendant that you want to notify. And what will end up happening is when those email notifications for the initial reservation request comes in, they will receive that information. Again, this is good for people that don't always have their nose in Fleet Commander, where they're not monitoring by the dashboard. This will give those particular individuals a heads up on that. And I actually know of a client that I have a meeting with next week that I'm going to be recommending this particular setting to them based on their operations. In addition to this, we also have supervisor emails. When you can do this at a enterprise level for all of your users that have supervisor information stored within their user profile. You can check off so that every time a new profile is added to Fleet Commander, these settings are set for those profiles going forward. They include sending new request emails to the supervisor, sending request email change request emails to the supervisor, the notification email, the approval email, the cancellation email. You can pick and choose there at the configure enterprise settings user tab on which ones that you want the supervisors to receive. Once again, this won't be sent out unless within a person's profile that's making those reservations, they have that supervisor information logged within their user profile, the name, the email address on that. And again, this is for everyone going from that point that you set these forward. If you need to go back and retrofit this to some of your users, or be very specific that certain of your users are to be notified to their supervisors, you can do that at the user level itself. You would go into the user's profile of those each in the individuals, and then you would click on which ones which emails their supervisors should receive. And again, this shows you this screenshot, the supervisor's name and their phone number and that email address. That will be the email address where those that will receive these emails. Bonus tip on this, and this actually applies to all the fields that are email, and I just noticed here I placed it in the wrong spot. You don't want to do what this example shows right here and putting a supervisor's name, email address in the supervisor's name. You always want to make sure that that is within the supervisor email field. But if what you can do is you can add multiple email addresses up to about 98 characters or spaces from my testing of this, where you're not sent the supervised email is sent not just to one person but to multiple people on that. And again, it does matter where you put that email address, and this is one of those situations where would be one of those troubleshooting situations that we talked about, where information may not be found in the right place where it's supposed to be. And we'll get back to more troubleshooting a little bit later in this presentation. A bonus tip here that just is interesting: you can actually change the label within Configure Enterprise Settings User tab of the supervisor. You can change that from being supervisor to something else that's more pertinent to your operation. You can change it, like in this example, to department head. And in doing so, it will feed into every area of Fleet Commander where this file is used. And kind of reaching back into our presentation from March, these particular emails that would be received by the supervisor would include the new request, the change request completed, reservation cancellation, or reservation approved. These and many more can be edited, as we covered in our first Workshop Wednesday. And we provide a link here to that particular one to give you more guidance on changing the layout of those emails. Also, a feature within Fleet Commander is that you can send emails to the fiscal officers. For those of you that are using the billing capability of Fleet Commander and you're making use of the account number table, which is found under configuration user accounts, you actually can have Fleet Commander send out the initial request email to the fiscal officer or the supervisor of that particular account number. There's a couple steps to do that. First of all, you have to have the accounts set up within Fleet Commander. That is, again, through configure user accounts. As you can see here, when you go in, you can add new accounts and add the information for the accounts. You can also view and edit established accounts. And in this case, when you go in there, you can see that there is a contact name and email that is set up for this particular account number 17344. Then the purpose of doing this is the way that we used it at IU was basically our a way of giving a fiscal officer the ability to say yes or no, that this reservation is approved by them and by their for the use of that individual. And we communicated that with throughout the university. It was understood that if they received an email that said that so and so had a reservation, that it was up to them to respond if that was not going to be approved by their department on that. And to finalize this portion of it, this particular email does have to be activated, and that is found under configure enterprise settings and then the other tab. You scroll all the way down to the very bottom and you have this little section that says notify account contact. You check that and that will trigger that email to be sent out to the email addresses that are associated with that account number when that account number appears on a reservation. So you'd have to have it activated within the table. You have to have it set up within your reservation to capture that account number. And then you have to have this notify account contact in order to have this go out. Those are the emails, the configurations that have to be done kind of at the recipient level. And we're going to take a look at a couple of these emails that are sent out that you can choose to send out or not. And again, many of these are going to look familiar because we discussed them at the first workshop Wednesday. As you can see here, we provide a link here. If you click on it, when you receive this, when you pull this deck from online, it'll take you to the original workshop Wednesday. But one of the ones that you want to consider is the online registration email. Whenever a user clicks on sign up now, it will take them to through the registration process. And once they save their registration, they receive this online registration confirmation. Now, that is, again, assuming certain configurations are set up in Fleet Commander. One in particular is to simply allow users to register via the web. Some of your sites, y'all are not using this particular link because of single sign-on or other protocol there, but most of our clients do. And so this is clicked during the configuration setup. As long as this is clicked, this will allow you then to make the next process and step of sending out that email. What that's found is then at the site level, you go in configuration, site settings, edit site, and then user tab. And what will end up coming is up is these three little boxes here. Are you going to allow for online registration of that particular site? Again, within Fleet Commander, we have your domain and the enterprise settings, but then you may have particular sites within your operation. You can choose on site A to do online registration, the site B and C, maybe not. So this is where you would make that determination. You would click on that. And then if you want emails to be sent out to the user acknowledging their registration, after they do the online registration, the OLR, then you would click that particular tab. And then you might already be ahead of me on this and see what has not been clicked here. This is the bonus admin email. If you want to make sure that you receive, as an admin, a notification that someone has signed up and is awaiting their profile to be approved, then you can click this at the site level and receive that notification yourself. But again, we do recommend that you monitor that in real time through your dashboard, because it will show you that you have user spending. But of course, you may not always be in Fleet Commander. And so this would be a way of telling you that somebody needs to have their profile approved. Other emails that we're going to cover here include those automated reservation reminder emails. There's 4 of those that can be set up within Fleet Commander. That's found under configure site settings, edit site, and reservation tabs. Again, this is a site level one, so you can decide that site A does not apply to that site, but B it does, and C it does in this case. And you click those boxes as you see fit. You have the enable upcoming reservation reminders. This, whenever it's set up, will tell your person with a reservation that their reservation is upcoming, and it's set by default at 4 hours, and that currently is a hard 4 hours. That's not something that can be edited within Fleet Commander currently. The next setting is the enable late pickup reminders. This one you can make a determine on when this email would be set up. It basically tells them that they're running late to their reservation and picking up their vehicle. That is based upon within the Configure Enterprise Settings Reservation tab. There is a late pickup in minutes. So what will end up happening is that once their start time passes, it'll add whatever amount of minutes that you've placed in there as being considered late. And after that point, if that late pickup reminder is clicked, it will send out that late reminder email automatically after that point. And then in the very same fashion with late return reminders, you have that ability to send out an automated email based upon the late for return in minutes. Again, they're supposed to get here at return at 4:30. It's now 4:40. Immediately after that point, that late email will arrive. And then you also have the auto cancellation, the very same fashion. What will end up happening is an automated email will go out, and that occurs kind of like the reservation reminder. This is a hard set when it will go out. If you automatically have your reservations canceled, if they're not picked up by the time of the indicated return time, then that auto cancellation will show up. For you, those of you who have our kiosk system, there are 3 emails that you can consider. They're very similar in fashion, in the sense that it's giving you the knowledge of when vehicles are being checked out and in from the system. Since obviously these are in many cases are remote, you're not going to see this happening. You'll be able to have that. Get an email that basically lets you know that these vehicles have gone out. That's again based upon configure, site settings, edit site, and then under the kiosk tab, you can click on the send checkout confirmation email. You can send a check-in email. And you could also receive emails in regards to any comments that might be entered there at the kiosk. Now, automatically, the system will send out an email if the comments have been typed into that comment space. However, if you want to make sure that you're receiving those emails every time, then that's when you would require comments in that same section there. And that way you will always, it will force the user to make some sort of comment about the reservation. And there's reasons to do that, particularly if you want to enforce a policy where they have to tell you that the condition of the vehicle is fine, that it's been cleaned, that it's been refueled. You can garner that information through that particular email. And again, these are the text of these emails can be configured within Fleet Commander. With the last few minutes that I have in my 30 minutes that I had figured, we're going to do some basic troubleshooting. As I mentioned, these are steps that our support team will do if you call up and say you're not receiving emails. And so if you're so inclined, you want to take these steps yourselves, you're certainly welcome to do so. First of all, I got the calls all the time, and I would actually go through these steps myself frequently whenever I would get somebody calling and saying that they were not receiving their emails. You just kind of go through these steps, and they're quite simple, but they are oftentimes very effective in regards to what you can do. First of all, always make sure that the email address that this person is supposed to be receiving their email at, if it's a user, in this case, that is an accurate email. Many times I've seen where the M is left off of the .com. That will cause an email not to be sent. So go into your into the user profile. While you're on the phone or you're having discourse with them, ask them, verify what email address are they expecting to get this from, and it may be that they're thinking they're going to get a personal email at their personal email address, not their work email address. That may be the situation on that. That's a really quick and easy thing to determine. Once you determine that it is the correct email address that you have on file that it'll be sending to, send them a welcome email. In doing so, you can check and see, one, if they say, "Oh yeah, I just got it," um, then it may be that they didn't, that there really was no problem and it was like a temporary, momentarily type of problem. If they don't get it, then you can look further into the problem. One of the ways of doing that is actually through a tool that we have in Fleet Commander under Tools, Send Email, View Email Log. You can look and see what emails have been sent out from Fleet Commander. Um, on here, it will show you that, as you're looking at the log, you have this error column with a Y and an N. In this situation, if there's an N, that means that Fleet Commander is not recording any type of problem and sending that out. It went out from Fleet Commander. If there's a Y though, then yes, there is a problem. And then, at that point, you need to take this to the next step in figuring out why it was not sent out. At that point, you may be contacting your IT department, or you may be, contacting FC support. If there is, at that point, if you check the email log, one of the other things that you can do, if it says that it went through and was fine, another troubleshooting is to check the spam folder. This is another thing that happens a lot, is that emails go to junk files. So just kind of ask the person, the recipient, have they checked their spam folder? And sometimes the answer will be, I didn't, and oh, there it is. Another real important one. This is when things start getting a little bit more have to take more steps and dive deeper into the situation, is to verify the recipient email configurations, like the ones that we looked at earlier today. Go back to the slides 6 through 44. Take a look and see what configurations, based upon what email was supposed to be sent out, who it's supposed to go to. Check those various things, and then using a logical process, determine what setting do you need to check. It may be that somebody was placed a long-term lease and they said, I didn't get a confirmation email on it. Well, you go to the site setting and you take a look at the email notifications tabs, and you see that long-term leases was not checked, and so that would be the reason why they were not sent out. The other thing too, in troubleshooting, you can verify the email address is correct. Sometimes that is problematic. You can check under the configure enterprise settings, the general tab, and determine make sure that's correct. You can do also likewise with the site level email address. Again, it would be you have to determine, first of all, is this a site level email or an enterprise level email? You make those determinations. If those if they are correct, try changing the email address and see if that actually makes a difference. And this in particular is in regards to emails that are being sent to your admin. If you're expecting to get those admin emails and you're not getting them, try changing the email address in that case. At that point, and if all things fail, then you might, it may end up being truly an IT issue. At that situation, then what you can end up doing
What did she say?
is, hey, Joe, can we mute all users, please?
On the loop they have. So. Come on.
John, you're muted now.
Thank you. Mute
John, you're still muted.
I'm not sure how that keeps on happening on that.
You're back.
Okay, thank you, Ron. That basically is all the troubleshooting that we're going to cover today. Always a reminder, make sure to refer to the Fleet Commander System Admin manual for more information on this and other topics. And also you can, here's some links to go back to the previous 3 sessions that we have. And that is what I have. Joe, you are muted. So we are having a mute fest today.
Sorry about that. Hey,
That's all right.
why don't you go back a couple slides, because I think a slide or two before you got into SenderGrid, you were muted. So take a quick step backwards and maybe talk a little bit about SendGrid and yeah, so maybe one more before that. So that's cool. Okay.
Okay. So what I was mentioning at this point is what you can do is, verify the addresses within the enterprise level and the site setting level for emails. If you're not receiving that as an admin, check those out. And what we recommend is try changing the email address that it's going to. If it ends up going, you end up getting those emails, then there's a situation in regards to settings at your at your organization's level. Oftentimes you'll have to engage your IT department, and we have taken steps to try to alleviate this problem, because it was something that we were dealing with oftentimes, that our IP addresses were being blocked. We now work with SendGrid to overcome that. But in that same situation, still, you may need to engage your IT department and also our support team to help to get that corrected. That was the end portion of the troubleshooting portion. And so, was there any questions that we had, Joe? I don't see anything in the chat. And Joe, you're muted again, but.
Sorry, that was me. I did that. Sorry, no, I don't see anything for questions.
All right.
Anybody, any questions that you'd like to pose? Doesn't appear that way, John. An
No.
excellent job again.
Okay. Well, we have just a few closing slides then.
Looks like Jim had raised his hand.
And thank you for that. So can you
Jim,
unmute,
if you would,
Jim?
do you mind just typing it in the chat?
So Jim, do you still have that question? Are there a limited number of email addresses? If you're talking about the field in regards to kind of like stacking email addresses within the supervisor field, or then yes, there is, only in the sense that there's a limited amount of spaces available to input that information. And I think that is about somewhere between 96 and 99 on that. But other than that, there's not any type of limitation on that I'm aware of. Customers for pool vehicles, limitations for emails for customers for pool vehicles. The emails are sent out, as we discussed. There is a limit on who would receive emails. It is by design, the ones that would receive emails when a reservation is made, it would be sent to the requester. And then there also would be an email that's sent out to the driver if the driver is different than the requester. And then those are automatically sent out there's no configuration that has to be done to change that particular those recipients. But then we have the additional ones that we covered today, the supervisor, the fiscal officer, the attendant, the admin. They can all be included in that too. And then within those particular fields, you can add additional email addresses up to X amount of characters. Terry says, does the ability to stack emails apply only to the supervisor fields, or can users have multiple emails. I have not experimented on that one myself, Terry. I don't know the answer. That's something that you could try out right now, and it won't break the system. If I would, if you're go into your profile, if you want to go in and then add, Kathy's to that, you could do that and see if she receives it too. I'm not sure. It looks like Scott is typing a message. A tip to make sure your email system is working is to have an internal and external email address associated with an admin user. That way, whenever an email is sent out, the system is working for internal and external customers. Thank you. Yes,
Good point.
within each user profile, if it is configured as such, you have a space to put in personal and also work email addresses. So that's one way of capturing additional email addresses. And Fleet Commander will send out those emails based upon the preferred email. That setting is within each user profile on that. Now, if you don't see a personal email address file field, that's because it actually was removed during your configuration, and that is something that can be added or removed. If you want to do so, just contact support and they can help you with that. Any other questions? Joe, do you want to take it from here?
Sure. So why don't we go to the next page, John?
I'm on the can we help you?
Well, so
Yep.
so essentially, everybody, again, thanks for taking the time out of your busy days to join us. We hope you enjoyed today's discussion about advanced email configuration. As we always like to say at the end of these, we're here to help you. So, please feel free to lean on us when you need some help. We certainly offer refresher training. So if you need a couple of hours of refresher training because folks are coming back in the office or you've got some new staff, you can reach out to either John or myself and, we'll get you set up. So happy to do that for you. And again, one of the bigger challenges that we continue to see with our clients in terms of them managing their vehicles and getting accurate data is odometers. So, if you are running into consistent issues with odometers, there's lots of ways to kind of handle it. If you're using different telematics products like Geotab or GPSI, we're certainly able to integrate that data dynamically for you. Other providers, if you've got questions about, things, what can they provide, reach out to us and we'll help you kind of decipher that. And then some of the other things, if you're looking to get really total cost of ownership, fuel is a big driver of that, especially in today's environment. So if you need help bringing in a data file, happy to help you there. I think a lot of you folks know that, and certainly a lot of you folks, I think, use WEX, as a provider. And, WEX is one of those, vendors for us that, automatically integrates into Fleet Commander. And then a couple of other things, and that is, on billing. We've made some great changes recently with billing in terms of the algorithm. So, there's 5 different ways to, generate charges. From what we've seen in working with a number of clients recently, we think we've got a lot of, those pains covered. So, reach out to us and we can help you make sense out of billings and cost allocations. And lastly, kiosk and key box. Great many of you folks use key boxes and kiosks. It's a great time saver. While there is a cost element to it, you more than recoup that in terms of, staff efficiency, reduced workload, and getting them to do the right things. So lots of things that we can help you with, as well as other things that isn't here. If you have any general questions about your vehicles or, what are some of the best practices in terms of optimization, that's why we're here. So we're happy to help you any way that we can. Next month, again, third Wednesday of the month, July 20th, we're going to be getting into feedback. Feedback's kind of an interesting thing. Some folks think that, feedback in Fleet Commander is for us, i.e. Agile. It's not, it's for you. And we always encourage, you to enable feedback so that you can get your folks to tell you what's working, what's not, what they like, what could improve. So, that's a real good one for next time. And, then we'll be getting into dispatching, auto and manual vehicle assignments. That's always key, because one of the things we see is certainly from an auto dispatch capabilities, that's typically where you have the least amount of problems. When you get into manual assignments, lots of things tend to get left. So that's where the data gets a little bit backed up in spots. And then, in September, we'll be talking about reservation cancellation tools, which is always a good one. Because that's one of the great new features in Fleet Commander, where we've added some capabilities to automatically cancel reservations. And I believe with 509, we're going to be further improving that, so that if you make a reservation, and somebody doesn't pick the vehicle up, we'll have a more flexible cancellation window. So if you wanted to cancel, vehicles that weren't picked up within, 15 minutes or 20 minutes after their, scheduled departure time, the system will do that. So there's lots and lots of good things going. And also look for our webinar on version 509. So 509 is getting ready to land. We're getting through the final testing of it, this week. And then we'll, start doing a couple of client betas. And we expect to start releasing that into the mainstream in early July. So stay tuned for that. A lot of good stuff there, and some really interesting new capabilities in Fleet Commander around managing vehicle costs. So I think that's probably it, John. I don't know if there's any other.
It is.
I think that's it. So everybody, again, thank you for, working with us today, and we appreciate all your time. Have a great rest of your day, and, look for our email with the links to the content.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you, folks.
Thanks, guys.